Welcome to a special Monday episode of Sports Vibe. We're going to be talking about all things college football, the NFL. Rutgers had a big football game yesterday. It was nationally televised on CBS. It was also on WRSU, so I was producing that game. But very exciting. Rutgers just looked really dominant. They won 24-7 against Northwestern. Now, granted, that was a Northwestern team that went 1-11, had all sorts of off-season controversies with the hazing scandal, and they just, didn't really look good. But at the same time, that's not a game Rutgers was expected to blow them out. I mean, I think people had an idea Rutgers was going to win. It might have been a close game, but I think Rutgers really impressed. Because before you couldn't really trust Rutgers to even, take care of business against like a lesser opponent in the way that they did, especially in the Big Ten. And now they've taken that step, they've done that, and I just feel like a lot more confident going into the rest of the season. Obviously, Temple, Virginia Tech coming up.
And this is Rutgers like first win against Northwestern, I think 30 years or something like that, right? Like 1991 was their last victory against Northwestern. They lost the previous two matchups.
Yeah, I think you might be right about that. I think they lost their previous, yeah, because they were in the Big Ten before 2014. They did lose their previous two, while they're in the conference, and that includes one from I think a couple years ago where Rutgers was a favorite and at Northwestern, and then Northwestern, won that game in pretty convincing fashion. So Rutgers kind of this time took care of business, and they're 1-0. Like I said, feels good. I was impressed with what I saw. I mean, Gavin Wimsatt, he had a couple throws where I felt like defenders could have made a play on it. But I mean, at the same time, he other than that, I think he played pretty well. He was athletic. He made some tough throws. Some unsung heroes or new players really stepped up. Ian Strong with a beautiful 1 foot toe tap catch in the end zone. Deshaun Benjamin, who I didn't even expect to, really get any playing time at all. He had, I think, 11 carries for 24 yards in the absence of Sam Brown and Al-Shadi Salam. So I mean, I was impressed to see what the new guys were able to do with the guys like Chris Long and Dremel and Isaiah Washington, the guys who've been in the system for years but have been behind guys like Crookshank and Sean Ryan, Jamean Jones, like they really stepped up as the new leaders of the Rutgers passing offense, which I think has a chance to break out. So I mean, and on defense, I mean they were getting corner blitzes and sacks and two interceptions, one from Maxwell, one from Longerbeam, Robert Longerbeam. Absolutely dominant. Northwestern couldn't get anything going. On top of that, Rutgers dominated the time of possession. Northwestern was barely on the field. I mean, just it was incredible. I mean, Rutgers was dominating on both sides of the ball. I mean, you don't usually expect that in a Big Ten game, even if the defense is going well, like the offense won't, if anything, if it even comes to that. So I mean, it was great to see. I don't think Rutgers fans expected anything better. So I guess with that being said, I think they're about 10-point favorites next week against Temple. I think it could be a lot wider than that. Temple kind of struggled a little bit against Akron. So I mean it'll be fun. I feel more confident going into like Temple, Virginia Tech, even like, some of the other toss-up games later on, Michigan State, Indiana. So that whole six-win
Well,
thing that
I think
everyone's
we had to hold our horses on Michigan State just now. I mean, like Rutgers has had previous fast starts, like the last season and the season before, and uh, things went a little off the rail over there. But I'd say like a MVP of this game, I give it to. I'm probably going to end up butchering his last name, so but uh, Kyle Monangai. I'd probably
yeah,
give him
common that guy, yeah. Mhm.
Monangai. All right, yeah, yeah. Like I said, still learning, but I'd probably give him a MVP of the game. How about you, Alex?
Well, guys, first off, thanks for having me. Look, I mean, this was a complete game for Rutgers, and it shows their strength in the run game. And you had to have that to beat Northwestern to win this game. Manungai had a great game. I thought Gavin Wimsatt played well. Manungai maybe could be your game MVP or player of the game, but if you really look at it, it was a complete team effort on both sides of the ball versus Northwestern. I mean, you
Of
had the
course,
two
like
picks, one by Longerbeam, one by Max Melton. But you had Gavin Wimsatt start strong on that first drive with that great touchdown pass to kick off the game. And then afterwards, he had a run. Manungai had a touchdown run. And, that new kicker, Jai Patel, got some pretty good opportunities to make that field goal he did and get those extra points. So, look,
of
I mean,
course, he missed one, but at least he made the other.
Right. But at the end of the day, it was just a complete team effort. And this is a game you knew Rutgers had to win. If Rutgers lost to Northwestern, then we're not sure what happens the rest of the way. Sure, they win 4 or 5 games, maybe, but that loss to Northwestern really would have been detrimental to their entire season to make a bowl this year. But thankfully, they got the win. They start 1-0 for the third straight year. And look, this is a Rutgers team that has to build upon their success. Look, the run game was great. The defense was solid. What I'm going to critique a little bit is the passing game. Now, guarantee Wimsatt had good numbers, had that nice touchdown pass, but Rutgers still threw less yards in the air than Northwestern. Northwestern threw nearly 170 yards. Now, that's not.
Yeah, I think you're back, Alex.
Yeah, coming in. Sorry about that. Anyway, if you compare that to Rutgers's, yards of 122, 123 in the air, and Northwestern had about 169, 170, Rutgers still won the game, but you need to still be outbeating them in the air. So my thing is for Rutgers, not just versus Temple next week, but against the rest of the out-of-conference foes, especially leading up to Big Ten play, can Rutgers build their passing game even more? That's going to be a big deal. And especially if we're saying Michigan State's a toss-up to make or break whether or not Rutgers gets the 6-win margin, that passing game is going to be, instrumental to whether or not Rutgers makes a bowl. And Wimsatt,
100%.
yeah.
100%.
So that, and Wimsatt has to be able to grow in that over time. Now again, solid game, not trying to diminish his performance, but Gavin Wimsatt as a whole, again, great game, great touchdown pass he threw to kick off the game, a great rushing touchdown he had to further build the offense. That run game has to work hand in hand with the passing game if Rutgers is going to find success more offensively this year, and especially if they're going to find a way to break into a bowl game with 6 wins.
Yeah, and I think because if you look at it from the top 3 receiving leaders for both Northwestern and Rutgers, Northwestern amongst the top 3 receiving yards, they beat Rutgers top 3. So it's and that's who this is Northwestern, as you mentioned last year, they struggled quite mightily. So I wouldn't say this poses for concern because overall, I still like the amount of ball disparity through the air. Washington and Johnny Langan, they definitely got the majority of the reps. That made up half of the receptions. Sorry, having a tough time talking today for some reason. And of course, we had a fairly balanced amongst Chris Long, Ian Strong, and then Christian Dremel. But it's we can't just as you mentioned, Alex, there has to be more involvement in the passing game. And I think this is certainly a good learning experience because 1, Rutgers got the win, and 2, this is the first game of the season. You can only go up from here, or
of course,
you can also only go down from here. But considering where we've been for the past 2 seasons, let's be bullish on Rutgers.
Well, look, again, it was just a great team effort. It's great that they got the win. It was phenomenal the way they played. And again, I'm not trying to downgrade their victory. It was a very important win and a must-win game, of course, to begin the new campaign. But the fact that they got it in the way they did was great. And of course, they're still getting their kinks back in there. They're still trying to get things working out. But that's something to keep an eye on the rest of the way. And I'm looking to see more of an improvement in week 2, 3, maybe versus Michigan in week 4, and definitely versus Wagner in week 5. I'm looking to see more improvements and see whether they can build up that passing game before we hit October and we have a full slate of Big Ten in October and November.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Arnav, if you could recap the rest of the college football games.
Sure. Yeah, I'll do that. I guess I just wanted to make a point about what you guys said. I mean, I think you guys are right about the passing game. I mean, Gavin Wimsatt had a pretty decent performance. He went 17 for 29 with 163 yards and a touchdown in the air, and then he also had
solid QBR rating too.
Yeah, very solid. And he had a rushing touchdown, so he used some of his athleticism and running ability, which he has a lot of. And then on the other side of for Northwestern, Ben Bryant went 20 for 35 with 169 yards and 2 picks. So Gavin Wimsatt kept it clean, didn't throw a pick, although, like I said, he put a couple footballs in places where it went off Northwestern defenders, so that was a little risky. And he missed a few guys, but he also made some really good throws, such as the one that, Ian Strong, another one on fourth down that got them another conversion. And I like what I was seeing with the aggressiveness to get first downs and all of that, because that really kept the drive going in the beginning of the game that got them that first touchdown. And that really set the tone for the game. The Rutgers, means business. And as for Kalmanungai, I mean, he really picked up the slack in the rushing game. He had a nice catch that went for 20 yards. And then he had another one where he juked out the defender to go to the end zone and completely broke his ankles. It was the coolest thing. So I mean, definitely Kalmanungai. I mean, I guess you could argue that he would probably get the MVP, but like Alex said, like it's definitely a team effort. Rutgers dominated on both sides of the ball, which, like, I'm not too used to seeing unless it's like, a team like maybe like Wagner or something like that, or maybe Temple and in some cases, although last year was a different story of
Yeah.
16-14
I think
Rutgers.
yeah, I mean, like, it's nice to be dominated on both sides of the ball, but let's not forget in football that there's three sides. So like
Special teams.
if Belichick were the coach of this team, he'd probably be ripping the special teams apart right now, and like in film walkthroughs. But the punting game wasn't bad.
Hmm.
I mean, of course, field goals, um,
One for two.
one out of
Yeah.
two. I mean, first game of the season, so it's not all
Right.
that
And it's his
impactful.
first game that of his career because he wasn't the starter last year. So this is
Right.
his
Yeah.
first game. So for Jay Patel.
And of course, punting reception, that needs a little work.
Yeah, Rashad. But here's the thing, like that the benefit of like having those kind of mistakes in a game like this is that Rutgers still got the win. And that's kind of when you can allow those, well, not really allow this to happen, but you can learn from them. Like Rashad, he's also a new player. He played
Right.
a bit last season actually, and he's really good. He's like a gadget type player, but he could use some work. Maybe you don't make a play on that ball, or you have to secure it. Like Emeka Egbuka made the same mistake against Rutgers, and that led to a Rutgers touchdown last year against Ohio State. So things like that do happen, even if for very high level players. But I mean, you make a mistake, then it's gonna stick in your mind. You're probably never gonna make that kind of mistake again. And then as for Patel, like nerves probably got to him a little bit there, I would think, because he's a very accurate kicker. But better to miss a kick when you're up 17-0, trying to go up 20-0, than a crucial kick against like Michigan. Now you can't win. You know what I mean? So it's good that they have an opportunity to make mistakes and learn from them when they still can. And they'll be able to do it. And like Alex said, the next few weeks are about confidence building, getting wins. Temple, Virginia Tech, go out there, play your best against Michigan. Maybe they keep it close again, which they've weirdly done, like it feels like 3 years in a row now. Who knows? But if they show some fight in that game, I'd be pretty inspired. And then Wagner, they take care of business, get to 4-1. I think they're really looking in a good position to win some more toss-up games like.
The thing is, Arnav, you see the way that the seasons have started the past 2 years. 3-0 start, then you go 3-2, 3-3. You end up with a losing record. Now in 2021, they made the bowl because of the whole COVID situation with Texas A&M. But we look at last year, same deal. 3-0 start, they lose a whole bunch of games. They finish 4-8, and things aren't pretty in the long run. But this year, they have a chance to go 4-1. And really, if we look at this schedule, there's no excuse to start 4-1. Temple's winnable. Virginia Tech is winnable. Wagner is definitely winnable. If they're 5-0 somehow, and if they can knock off Michigan, hey, the power to you. That'd be remarkable if that can happen. Now, is that realistic? Probably not. But at the same time, they have played close to a certain extent in some of these games over the past couple of years. So who knows? Maybe this is the year when Rutgers can finally beat Michigan,
Yeah,
and maybe they start 5-0 somehow. Who knows
and
potentially?
let's not forget Rutgers also murdered Wagner last year. So like
Right.
So that might
safe
happen
to
again
say,
this year, yeah.
yeah,
Probably
I mean,
actually.
you never know. It's football. It's sports. Anything
Right.
could happen. But
Right.
Rutgers can still ride off of some momentum from previous games last season. Of course, like I would not want to write off the momentum of Ohio State and Michigan from last year. That was not exactly well reserved in Rutgers' favor.
Mm.
But as you mentioned before, those games present learning opportunities, a chance to revise your mistakes, and to attack them next time. So we will see what happens. But like I think before we get to Michigan and Michigan State, like how Rutgers handles Temple and Virginia Tech, I think that would serve as a good indicator of whether we can you know go the distance with Michigan, maybe upset them, or we'll see how Rutgers learns from that experience and then attacks the next week with Wagner, Wisconsin following up.
Right. Right. Well, look,
Mhm.
again, if they're able to start at least 4-1, which they should by the time we hit October, there is no excuse to not make a bowl. And look, maybe Michigan State's toss up, but you've beaten Michigan State in the past, and guarantee Michigan State's beaten you 2 straight years now. But this is homecoming. You've played most of your games already at home. You'll have another home matchup versus Michigan State, and then following that, you're on the road against Indiana. You got to get 6 wins by then, because Penn State's not going to give you a win.
Ohio
Iowa's
State
not
is
going to give you a
definitely
win.
not going to be easy.
Ohio
Mhm.
State will be probably a bloodbath.
Yeah.
And Maryland, we can't rely on that being the toss-up game, because the past 2
Right.
years, Maryland has had the best football at the expense of Rutgers. So,
Right. And Iowa's also going to be a tough matchup because they also play with a lot of defense and good special teams, like kind of like Rutgers, and they might have a better offense this year with McNamara coming in from Michigan as well and Eric All. So I mean that's not a game you can really rely on either. So I think you guys are right. They have to start 4-1. They have to beat Temple, Virginia Tech. We'll see about Michigan, maybe to keep it close. And then Wagner, and then I think Michigan State and Indiana are really the other 2 games they have to win, even if they're toss-ups. They have to play their best football because they're not going to get a chance in the final 4 weeks of the season.
But
I
then
mean, they
again,
might, but they have to, and to ensure a bowl game, they have to win. Before that, they have to get to 6-2.
but then again, Rutgers can also be like one of those. How do I put it? Like you can't be one of those teams that coasts through. Like you can't just uh, hope and pray that you win every game, and then you just get absolutely stomped by the top ranked teams like Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. Like you have to be able to at least show that you can hold your own against these top tier teams.
right,
Like I mean, like it's one thing. Like let's say hypothetically, Rutgers goes undefeated, and well, not for the season, but it's like undefeated against all teams that are not ranked within the top 25. So like you go undefeated, except you lose against Michigan, you lose against Ohio State, Iowa, and Penn State right there. So that's 4 losses. That'd be 4 losses that where you could have showcased your ability as a team. Like, and if you lose all of those games, but you win the others, that does not exactly provide a optimistic outlook on how we should approach Rutgers. So like Rutgers in my mind, oh I forgot Wisconsin too, but it's like
yeah,
Rutgers in my mind, you need to I'd say forget about the wins at Michigan and Ohio State. I don't know if that's going to happen. I say you need to hold your own against them. Like be a worthy adversary. But let's see if you can flip a game like a Wisconsin. If you can flip Iowa, if you can even take 2 out of the 5, that should provide at least some optimism for not only Rutgers fans, but also for the team, for Shiano, and everyone else. But if that doesn't really happen, I don't really know how to gauge the team. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, look, here's a way to push back a little bit on that. I mean, again, if they get the wins versus Michigan State and Indiana, they're at 6. That's
Yeah.
that, right? And once they're at 6, they're in for a bowl. Now, I'm not saying once they get to 6, coast the rest of the way, get killed by 40 points, whatever. But we have to be realistic here. They're not going to beat Ohio State. They're not going to beat Michigan. They're not going to beat Penn State. They're not going to beat Iowa. They're not going to beat Wisconsin. Let's just be realistic. And since we're being realistic about that, I'm not saying they're going to win the game, but they got to show some strong suits, especially in the passing game and in the team effort area as a whole. If they can make those games within 15 points or 10 points, that's a win in its own right. Now, is it realistic against Ohio State? Maybe not.
Probably not.
But it has been versus Michigan. And Rutgers guaranteed has lost by double digits versus Penn State. But 2 years ago at State College, they made things close within 7 points at halftime. So, the thing is that we need to see a complete game in all these matchups. And whether they're wins or losses, it's got to be a complete 60 minutes and the game has to be close. Now, again, if they lose the games, that's one thing. But if they're going to be able to have a complete effort, they lose by a respectable margin, that should give you hope if they're at 6 wins at that time. And that should give you hope that whether they win a bowl game or not, they can compete against whoever that opponent would be in a potential bowl game.
100%. I agree with that. So like it's because as you mentioned, like it's unlikely wins against a Michigan and Ohio State, but hey, you never know. Sports
Right.
exist.
You got to play the
Anything can
game,
happen.
so.
Yeah. But like, if Rutgers can be a worthy adversary, can hold their own, like, just like be in the game for like forget the first half, for the first 3 quarters or so or itself. Like that it shows that Rutgers has advanced significantly over the past 2 years, but it remains to be seen.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, speaking of Ohio State, they didn't look too great in their week 1 win against Indiana. I mean, maybe their defense did because they held Indiana 3 points, and that's a Big Ten team. That's not an easy feat, for any team really. But their offense didn't really look inspiring for their standards. I mean, you're kind of used to them passing the ball over all over the football field, and I mean, they're bringing in a new quarterback with Kyle McCord, who's also competing with Devin Brown, so that might be a bit of the issue. McCord threw a pick, didn't exactly have CJ Stroud numbers, but at the same time, it was his first game. A lot of people are thinking like this could be a little bit of a down year for the Buckeyes. And now a down year for them probably still means like at the very worst they go like 9-3, 10-2, and I think that would probably still be like a nightmare. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you're an Ohio State fan, I'd be a little worried because they haven't been Michigan 2 years. They lost the playoff game, and then now it appears that they've actually gotten a bit worse. They've taken a step back, and their schedule isn't exactly the easiest. I mean, they got Notre Dame in a few weeks. They've got Penn State, Wisconsin, obviously Michigan. So there's some room for teams to make an upset. Penn State with Drew Aller might be really good this year. People are
But
saying they
let's
could make
not
the
forget
upset. So
we
we'll
can't
have to see, I
exactly
guess.
let's not forget we can't exactly gauge team performance off of one game, and that's it's the inaugural game of the season. Well, for these teams, so it's like
Yeah,
I'd say like,
that's a fair
and
point.
considering that these are 12-game seasons, I'd say maybe like a good metric where we're gonna start gauging the teams actually is probably after like week 3 or week 4. I mean, that's normally when
Yeah.
we know when
sure,
a team is going to be good or not.
Definitely.
Sure,
said
but
that,
at the
yeah.
same time, you want to see growth early. And look, I mean, McCord's a new kid in this new system for him. He's taking over C.J. Stroud. He's taking over Justin Fields before him, then Dwayne Haskins before him.
Right.
So Ohio State, despite these quarterbacks being so-so and not great in the pros, they've had historic seasons with the Buckeyes and Columbus these past couple of years. So that's a lot for this kid to take over. But at the same time, it's just he's got to grow in that. And maybe it could be a down year to a certain extent, but let's not forget that Marvin Harrison Jr. is still on this program and that kid is going to be such a help for a guy like McCord. And look, McCord doesn't have to be CJ Stroud or Dwayne Haskins or Justin Fields or any of that. I'm not saying he has to be poor, but he has to be competent. And what I mean by competent is, for example, Mac Jones. Mac Jones is good, especially was good with Alabama in college. But you look at Devontae Smith and Najee Harris and Jalen Waddle and all the supporting cast he had around him, that got them to a national championship. If Kyle McCord can build that over time with Harrison and the rest of the strong offense for Ohio State, then it could be somewhat of a similar circumstance potentially.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like, you don't need to try and be like Justin Fields in Ohio State. You need to demonstrate your football intelligence just by yourself. You don't. I mean, you can try and emulate someone's game. I'm not saying you can't do that, but you don't need to be that. You don't need to feel the pressure to be that guy and step up to be their shoes. You just need to be yourself. Like, know everything, be competent on the field, and you'll ball out by proxy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think it'll take a little bit of time. I think he has some guys he can really look up to, I guess, in terms of CJ Stroud and even Dwayne Haskins and all the other Ohio State great quarterbacks that have, made to the NFL. But yeah, we'll have to see how that quarterback room, shakes out, how Ohio State season, shakes out. It's one game. They also do have a little bit of softer schedule with Youngstown State coming up, Western Kentucky. So they have a couple games to figure things out before the big test against Notre Dame at Notre Dame. I guess another matchup that I wanted to touch on was TCU Colorado, because this was like one of the most I guess intriguing games of the whole week one slate, and it was a team in TCU that went to the national championship and got hammered by Georgia, but they still made it there. They beat Michigan. They
Well,
went to the playoff and
it was
the
a hell of
national
a, it was a hell of a
championship game.
shootout, but quite an upset by Colorado.
Yeah, and Colorado, they revamped their whole roster. They went 1-11 last year. And here comes Coach Prime, Coach Deion Sanders, flips the roster, gets all this talent on his team, has his son throw for 510 yards at quarterback, has Travis Hunter play receiver and cornerback both sides of the ball, and so many other guys to just, they upset one of the best teams like in the country from last year at least. So probably still a pretty decent team this year. And it's week one. I mean, I don't want to overreact, but I think Colorado might, really have something to say about how things go this season.
Well,
Look,
Deion Sanders talks the talk and walks the walk. But considering someone who's one of the best defensive players we've ever seen in the NFL, maybe letting up 42 points isn't exactly a great idea to showcase it. But hey, this is a top 20 team. So, and this is week one. Players are still adjusting to a new system. Deion Sanders himself is still adjusting to a new coaching system. So we'll see where this goes. But so far, definitely a good start by Colorado to the season.
well, look, I mean, it is a great start, and Deion Sanders making waves now in the NCAA. It says a lot about how he still has that, type of swagger and that image of who he is. And if he's able to translate this in a long-term thing, not just this year, but for many seasons to come, that says a lot for Colorado. And it's a very impressive way to kick off a new season against a team, despite them getting blown out in the national championship. TCU had a historic campaign one season ago. So it's Colorado having this great start, but it's also how is TCU going to respond? And again, it's only one game, but is TCU going to be able to answer later on? And let's say these two teams face off again later down the road in a potential Big 12 postseason game. What does that look like? And what could that mean for TCU? Could Colorado have an edge? And is Colorado a sleeper against a TCU, a Kansas State, or else you want to name in that conference?
Well, regardless in that situation, Colorado has nothing to lose. Like, it's really the other team's reputation that precedes them. I mean, Colorado, you went 1-11 last season. Like, the only way you can go down is if you pull a Cleveland Browns and go 0-12. But it's like, 1-11, it's kind of hard to not build up from there. And that's when you already got someone like Deion Sanders, and I'd say a fairly convincing win against a team that went all the way to the championship last season. I would be excited as a Colorado fan. I'd be optimistic about the prospects and everything that goes.
Well, I've got one last say before I hop off here. But look, I mean, again, we'll see what Colorado is, but also TCU, look, a great year last year and a great effort that came up short, obviously, in week one. I'm curious how the Horned Frogs are going to respond. And the thing is with TCU, they know they're good. They know they can make this run. They proved it last year. But are they going to be a team again that maybe makes a run, goes on this historical campaign again, and then gets blown out again in the national championship? So the thing is for TCU is just how do you bounce back after this, but also how are you looking to bounce back in general after a great year last year that ended in an absolute embarrassment on the national stage? So TCU also has a big factor in this too. But I am going to head off, guys. Many thanks, and great talking to both of you.
Yep.
Yeah,
Catch you later,
absolutely.
Alex.
Thanks for coming on.
Yep.
And I guess like aspiring to Alex's point in regards to TCU, like, and I hate saying this, like, as a hockey fan, like TCU, like last year, they were like the Florida Panthers, like from the NHL, because like
pretty much
you don't really expect anything from them, and then boom shakalaka, they inhale all the magical pixie dust or whatever, Then they go on this historic run only to be trounced into the finals. Does that
Right.
sound fit? Does that sound similar to something we
Yeah,
saw last postseason?
pretty
But
similar.
yeah, but like, like I think when it comes to Cinderella runs, like and then trying to build back for next season, you like not only as players but as an organization, like you have to be able to tell a fine line between Cinderella run, probably never going to happen again, or can we build off of this? Like, because it's a Cinderella run. No one in the world expects, like, I don't even know if Panthers fans last year expected them to be in the finals before, like, um, my team absolutely got humiliated. But like, I don't know if that was going to be realistic, but like Cinderella runs, like they can they can hinder like a team in the upcoming years, or it presents the opportunity for a team to build back and be stronger. So we'll see what is being made of TCU like after this week.
Yeah, it's a long season. A lot they can do. I mean, they have a lot of Big 12 games. Might be one of the favorites in the Big 12 this year. And we'll see if Colorado makes any noise in Pac-12 to try to beat teams like USC. I mean, they might just be that good. So I guess we don't know yet. It's been 1 week, so I mean, we'll have to see how things go for the rest of the season when they enter Pac-12 play. But another game that I wanted to talk about was Florida State LSU, probably the best game of the week or the most hyped. Especially if weren't thinking about Rutgers Northwestern. That was definitely a game you're watching either way. Last night, Sunday night. It was a great one. Florida State definitely got the upper hand. It was a close game. LSU had a 17-14 lead at the half, but Florida State really pulled away. They had an interception. They were just also like dominant on both sides of the ball, but I guess against a much more talented opponent coming from the SEC who won the SEC West. And there has been a lot of hype about Florida State all off season. They have Jordan Travis at quarterback. They have Keon Coleman from transfer from Michigan State, absolutely electric receivers, hard hitting defensive players. So I mean, I could see this team possibly making a playoff run themselves. I mean, they seem like they have all the talent like in the world, really. I mean, they could very well challenge Clemson for the ACC and get into the college football playoff as one of the four final teams. You agree
Yeah,
with that?
yeah. I mean, Florida State usually is like does usually have like quite the talent pool. So we'll see what things from here.
Yeah, definitely. They used to be one of the teams, I guess, who used to have a great reputation. They've kind of fallen off a little bit, but this might be a big rise to prominence. I guess for the final few minutes of the show, wanted to touch on the NFL. Kickoffs this Thursday with Chiefs Lions, and week one is this week. So I mean, you said you had
Football's back,
something that
baby.
you said you had
Football
something you
is
wanted.
finally back.
I know, I can't. I'm so excited. The Giants Cowboys on Sunday night, Jets Bills on
No,
Monday night.
isn't that
MetLife is
always
gonna have a
isn't
great
that
opening
always like a
weekend.
primetime matchup for week one, Giants Cowboys?
I don't know about
It's
prime time, but it's Cowboys are a very common opponent. It's actually been a few years, but for a while it was
yeah,
Giants Cowboys like every
what is
year,
it?
week
It's been
one.
almost what, like 3, 4 straight years, maybe
Yeah,
more. If
without that matchup. So I guess they were due, but I'm excited. It's going to be huge. Sunday Night Football. There's been so many changes on both sides of the ball for the Giants, and the receiving core looks a lot better. If there's any
And
time to pull an upset
speaking of the
against
Giants,
Dallas, it's this week.
speaking of the
So
Giants, I
that's
don't
all
know
I'm
if
going
you
to say.
saw. Yeah, speaking of the Giants, I don't know if you saw Schefter's update, but Daniel Jones's massively overpaid contract. Part of it got converted into a signing bonus, so they cleared up some cap space.
Perfect.
Maybe Daniel Jones might technically not be as overpaid because some of it is put into a signing bonus rather than salary. But
It's fair.
then again, he's still not worth $40 million a year. I'd give him
Yeah,
at most 25. But
I would probably
the
say the
market got
same,
completely
but
reset.
right. More for quarterbacks, less for running backs. Like I think we all know how that
Well,
works. But
that's actually what I wanted to talk about. Like I
okay,
think
perfect.
like the running backs. I mean, the running backs right now, they're like the dinosaurs before the meteor came. Like they're like, they were maybe not at the height of the position as they were once, but running backs are certainly like, I think it's a completely dying field. And honestly, what I don't understand is why people are still choosing to be running backs when they get drafted. Like you're better off like
Or playing
I think
receiver
like
at that point, yeah. Or
even being like a tight end, like or
true,
like
yeah,
if you want to stay on the offensive side, like I think like because if you, I mean, obviously we weren't alive 30 years ago, but like 30 years ago, it'd be ludicrous to think a team cannot win a Super Bowl without a damn good running back. Like you needed a running back as your catalyst. And like, I guess one example that still lingers today would be Derrick Henry. But even then, like you can only give the ball to Derrick Henry so much to cover up the flaws as the Titans.
true. Yeah. I think that's a great point. Running backs are being severely undervalued. I'm really glad they worked it out with Saquon Barkley with his contract, and Josh
Oh,
Jacobs, Jacobs said something
he's
similar,
still on
but
the market for next year. Same with Josh
yeah,
Jacobs.
we're definitely not
This is
out
only
of the
just a
woods yet.
temporary. This is only just a temporary postponement.
Uh,
The same problem is going to be here next year.
yeah, and by the way, Chris Jones is still holding out, and I heard he might be
I
taking that into the regular season too.
I'm happy. Whatever hinders the Chiefs is great for football.
Well, as long as the Eagles don't win another Super Bowl, I'll be happy. But
I would have rather seen the Eagles win than the Chiefs win.
than the Chiefs, yeah, it might be
And
a conference thing if you're an
I'm saying
AFC
this as a
fan and a
fan.
Patriots fan. So
No, I'm saying
you
this
know,
as a Patriots fan who's lost to the Eagle, who's
you've lost it. Yeah,
unfortunately.
Eagles and the Giants.
I'd
Yeah,
much rather
well,
see the Eagles win a Super
wow.
Bowl than the
Mm.
Chiefs.
Well, I think that's brings us to a perfect point to conclude the show. Patriots Eagles week 1. How are you feeling about that matchup?
Honestly, not the best because the Philadelphia Bulldogs,
Yeah,
is
they're probably
pretty
going to be
much the
coming
entire
out for blood after the way that Super Bowl went too. So
yeah. But
watch out. Okay.
I, I'd be happy if we keep it a close game. I think we win this game purely on special teams and on defense. But like offense, like Mac Jones, I'm excited with what will happen with Bill O'Brien. Kish, and then of course we Kendrick Bourne will be back. We got Devonta Parker, so we'll see where this goes, and of course Ramondre and Ezekiel Elliott as our 1-2 tailbacks. So bring it on to Philadelphia, bring it on.
Yeah, and with that, that's going to be our special episode today of Sports Vibe. Stay tuned for during the school year plans. I'm really excited to talk a lot more football, so we will see you then.